One of the coolest things about the most recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles iteration, Rise of the TMNT, was the incorporation of mystic weapons and powers. While the franchise briefly dabbled in mysticism during Season 5 of the 2003 version, Rise was the series that brought the concept to the forefront, with so many of our favorite characters and newest villains getting access to enchanted weapons and anime-esque power boosts. You have to wonder, who became the most powerful of this incarnation? Hey there, I'm Kifinosi with Wicked Binge, and this is Rise of the TMNT characters Weak to Powerful. As always, we're going to be starting with our weakest characters and working our way up to the powerful and nearly undefeatable. With this ranking, we're going to be taking into account their characters' weapons and abilities, their skills and intelligence, their resources, and their most impressive wins. Starting off this list, we felt that Warren Stone easily earned the title of weakest character. Yeah, apologies to Warren, but this was really no contest. Being the smallest and squishiest character in the show, Warren is out of his league when it comes to most fights. Even when Warren ends up getting a slight power boost, like the Mystic Gem in his first episode, or the Shredder Gauntlet later on in the first season, he really doesn't do much with these powers other than boast.
I love you too.
Now, to his credit, Warren is probably one of the most durable characters thanks to his regenerative abilities, but as useful as regrowing limbs is, it only gets you so far. For our silver medal of weakness, we have Baxter Stockboy. For those not in the know, this version of Baxter Stockman is a 10-year-old boy genius, and much like his adult counterparts, Stockboy doesn't really have much to fight back with. He does still have his robots, and they can provide a decent threat. His Stock and Shop robot kept Leo and Mikey on their toes, though it was easily defeated by April, and his Mousers were able to hack into the turtle tank and control it for most of an episode. But even with these instances, Stockboy still has 0 wins, and is, at the end of the day, still just a little kid. Getting the bronze medal of weakness is the evil puppet, Mrs. Cuddles. Though a bit unnerving and creepy, Mrs. Cuddles really can't hold a candle to most of the other villains in this series. She's able to scare others in a similar vein to other demonic toys like Chucky, and whenever people scream, it causes Cuddles to grow and become stronger. But even when huge, Cuddles is still just a plush puppet, so her ability to pack a punch is highly limited. Additionally, while screaming makes her grow, laughter can make her shrink back to normal size, making her very easy to defeat. Clumsy, yet still fairly strong. Next up is Bullhop. Though a reluctant mutant at first, Bullhop eventually managed to get used to his new form. However, that doesn't always stop him from tripping over himself. Still, as uncoordinated as Bullhop can be, he manages to be an excellent dancer when he focuses. We also can't ignore Bullhop's natural bull strength and size, nor can we ignore his bull horns. Honestly, we may be cutting Bullhop a bit of slack, but you can't deny that the dude has a ton of potential, and could probably be a legitimate threat if he ever decides to seriously train.
You got to go!
Next is the fake savior of the galaxy, Jupiter Jim, aka Marcus Moncrief. Once a famous sci-fi actor, Marcus believes himself to be the real Jupiter Jim. As such, he, somehow, has access to a variety of sci-fi weapons, gadgets, and armor. Marcus is able to perform the Jupiter Jim Nerve Pinch, a move that's able to paralyze enemies indefinitely. Though all these things make him a fairly decent opponent, it's Marcus's delusions and mental instability, as well as the fact that he isn't much of a fighter, plus his older age, that keep him from going any higher on the list. From a fake space hero to a robo-bear, we have Alberto next. So yeah, if you've played or seen Five Nights at Freddy's, you know how tough and intimidating animatronics can be. One of the earliest foes that the Turtles faced in the series, Alberto, was able to pack a real punch. Being made of metal, he's strong and incredibly durable. His inner wires also allow him to hack into other animatronics and turn them into allies for him to use. Despite his dopey appearance, Alberto is also pretty smart, given that he nearly took over an entire amusement park with only a bit of effort. Still, Alberto is far from undefeatable. While the Turtles may have struggled to physically fight him, April was able to bash his head in with a regular bat. Additionally, the Turtles are such terrible singers that their music was able to make him short-circuit. Not a traditional defeat, but a loss nonetheless for Alberto. Following him is the no-nonsense bugman, Repo Mantis. It honestly isn't too surprising to see Repo so down low in comparison to the show's other recurring villains, as while he may look like a monstrous mantis, he's just a businessman at the end of the day. His sharp claws make for some pretty deadly weapons, to be fair, but Repo doesn't exactly have the strength to use them.
purple one's funny.
He wasn't even strong enough to repossess an oxygen tank from an old lady, and later on in that same episode, Mikey had no problems defeating him with a ladder. His tow truck is just a regular truck, so no huge advantage there. His mantis cat, Mrs. Nubbins, doesn't really listen to him and is often trying to eat him, so she can't exactly be a resource nor ally to him either. Still, much like Bullhop, we're boosting Repo's ranking a bit simply due to his potential. Like we said, those claws of his are just things you don't want to mess with. Up next we have Senor Hueso. As the humble owner of the local yokai pizzeria, Hueso doesn't get too many moments to shine in terms of action scenes and often struggles when put up against opponents like the two mobs we saw in You Got Served or the Hidden City Police. Still, Hueso isn't a total pushover and has some skills that earn him a decent spot on our list. He's a competent sword fighter, and when fused with his brother, he can become Don Suave, a form that is able to charm anyone into surrendering. We only saw this form once, so we don't know if it has any limits, but it's still pretty powerful nonetheless. Ranking here is the friendliest face in the series, Todd. Although mostly a pacifist, Todd has shown several unconventional abilities that keep him from being considered as weak. For one, due to his superpower of friendliness, he's often able to get people to do what he wants, as seen with Mikey and Donnie when they tried to repo his trailer. His lemonade can also act as a sort of pacifying substance, which is good for distracting enemies. Secondly, Todd has shown small feats of strength, like when he carried the turtles to safety in Todd Scouts, or when he forged their new weapons in the Season 2 finale. Finally, we have to mention his Lemon Rush ability, where he calls upon the animals of the forest to fight for him. Yeah, it's pretty out there, but hey, it works. So while his pacifist nature keeps him from going any higher, it's safe to say that this capybara isn't one to underestimate. Reaching another villain, we're going to place Meat Sweats here. It's a bit frustrating to not see Meat Sweats any higher up, as this guy has one of the most OP abilities in the show, being able to absorb the abilities of other mutants.
I feel the rush of your delicious energy.
Though temporary, he's still able to use these stolen abilities to great effect. He also has shown his own natural strength and a meat tenderizer he wields as a hammer, and is durable enough to survive getting hit by a train. But as powerful as Meat Sweats seems, the guy falls short due to him just not having traditional fighting skills. It's easy for the turtles to either outmatch him with their own skills and strategies, or simply use his stolen abilities against him. We also saw in Cloak and Swaggart that Meat Sweats wasn't even able to fight off a bunch of hungry humans when he became surrounded. Considering he's supposed to be one of the turtles' toughest enemies, that's kinda sad. We won't put him any lower down due to his previously mentioned abilities, which are again incredibly useful, but that's pretty much where his potential ends. Next up is the always ready to fight foot recruit, aka Cassandra Jones. For an ordinary human, Casey is probably right up there with Lujitsu in terms of impressive strength and fighting skills. She's able to go toe-to-toe with the turtles and always manages to put up a decent fight. We also see that she's apparently strong enough to bust through concrete without injuring herself. After feeling disillusioned with the Foot Clan, Casey ended up creating her own clan of sorts, turning a group of Girl Scouts into incredibly strong warriors. Her array of ninja weapons and skills with the makeshift hockey stick are also very impressive, and given that she was the one who saved Splinter in the Season 2 finale, we felt that Casey more than earned a decent spot, even if we still can't call her our most powerful human character. We've finally reached our first of the turtles, Donatello. Yeah, just like in our 2012 TMNT Weak to Powerful video, we had to rank Donnie as the weakest of the turtles. Part of this comes from his soft shell, which he has to protect with armor. Donnie can also sometimes be quick to panic, and like his 2012 counterpart, has been captured a couple of times. Considering all that, we still can't say that Donnie is useless in a fight though, far from it. Donnie's intellect as well as his mystic-seeking goggles do give him a bit of an advantage. We also can't forget his huge arsenal of gadgets and tech, including his rocket-launching bow staff, jetpack battle shell, and even a blaster or two. Probably his coolest win was in the first episode, where Donnie was the only one of his brothers to get a hit on Draxum. Skipping ahead to the Season 1 finale, while he did end up taking some damage, Donnie was still strong enough to hold off a powered-up Draxum long enough for his bros to launch their big attack. So yeah, even if he's technically the weakest of the turtles, this techie in purple still has a couple wins under his belt. Just slightly above him is Donnie's very own dorky pal for life, April O'Neil. Being an ordinary human teen this time around, you'd think that April would be much further down. But no, she manages to be pretty strong in her own right, despite getting captured 1 or 2 times. When it comes to weapons, April wields both a regular and an enchanted baseball bat throughout the series, and is able to do a ton of damage with both.
Don't make me use this.
Her fighting skills also extend to martial arts. Despite only getting a day's worth of training from Splinter in the episode Fists of Fury, she was still able to put up a fight against her much more experienced opponent. April's also incredibly clever, using her wits to defeat meat sweats in Cloak and Swaggart, and being able to get out of her bindings using only an almond in Always Be Brownies. Now that is impressive. Perhaps her greatest strength, however, is her refusal to give up, allowing her to win several fights that she would have otherwise lost. Ranking several spots above his roommate is the magical Hypnopotamus. We shouldn't have to tell you guys that hypnosis powers can be pretty dangerous, and Hypnopotamus is no exception. Using his mesmerizing call, he's able to hypnotize enemies, although the effectiveness of this ability varies. Sometimes Hypno's able to hypnotize all his opponents at the same time, and at other points he can only hypnotize one person at a time. It's also implied that he wouldn't be able to hypnotize a yokai like Draxum, given how easy it was for Draxum to capture him. On the plus side, Hypno's powers can be recorded and used to create hypnotizing cassette tapes that can trap its listeners in an outfit trying on montage. Not the worst threat, but a threat nonetheless. We also can't forget Hypno's other magic abilities, like his spells or his deadly razor rings that he once used to nearly cut off Mikey's head. Unfortunately, what keeps Hypno from going any higher is the fact that if his magic fails, which it usually does, he will usually not have the fighting skills to back himself up. He's more of a mystical fighter than a physical one, and thus will easily lose in that scenario. Jumping into the ring, we have Ghostbear up next. Even before Ghostbear's mutation, he was an insanely strong wrestler that was able to nearly defeat Raph and Leo in the ring. Granted, that was wrestling and not a full-on hand-to-hand fight, but it was still pretty impressive. Once he was mutated, Ghostbear became even stronger as well as harder to defeat. Not only did he gain the strength, claws, and fangs of a polar bear, but he was also able to go intangible thanks to being part ghost, making it all the harder for opponents to hit him. This can, however, still be countered either by freezing him or by using mystic handcuffs. As such, his ghostly abilities aren't quite as impressive as they otherwise might have been. While Ghostbear manages to be a threat in his own right, this only just barely gets him to the upper half of our list. Next are the leaders of the Foot Clan, the Foot Lieutenant, and Foot Brute. Being a sort of brains and bronze duo, Brute provides the muscle while Lieutenant provides the leadership, as well as the ability to create an origami army out of any kind of paper.
I'm gonna grind your bones with my fist.
Although individual origami ninjas can usually be destroyed with 1 or 2 hits, they can be decent threats when powered up. As for Brute, he injured Raph pretty badly in the episode Hot Soup the Game, and gave Donnie a pretty hard time in Operation Normal. What keeps these two from going any higher, however, is that they're occasionally pretty dopey and they have an occasional lack of care. Unlike someone such as Casey, who's full of passion and is always up for a fight, Lieutenant and Brute don't always share that focus, which can sometimes lead to their defeat. From Foot to Hamato, we have Karai next. Although we only get to have her around for a couple episodes, Karai certainly made an impression both in terms as a character and as a warrior. In her day, Karai had been the only one strong and skilled enough to defeat her father, Orokusaki, after he was possessed by the Shredder armor. Fast forward to the modern day, and while her time in the Twilight Zone had drained her, Karai was still able to briefly fight off the Shredder using the ability Hamato Ninpo. Even after her physical body was killed, Karai was able to transfer her spirit to April, giving the girl a bit of a boost and allowing her spirit to still fight alongside April. Because we spent so little time with her, it's a bit hard to know how she compares to someone like Splinter, but considering all she was able to do in the few episodes she was in, we still feel that Karai is one of the most powerful in the series. Following her is the first season's main antagonist, Baron Draxum. Draxum showed himself to be a threat right away. Using alchemy, he was able to summon powerful vines as both a defense and a weapon, and had the ability to create stone golems to fight for him. Draxum was also incredibly strong and skilled physically, as well as durable, given that he was able to survive being crushed by a huge pile of rocks, as well as his mystic energy getting absorbed by the Shredder armor. Speaking of which, while we can't count the Shredder armor in this ranking, as that power boost was both temporary and unstable, Draxum still put up an impressive fight in the Season 1 finale against Splinter. Ultimately though, he wasn't able to defeat Splinter on his own, and had to resort to threats in order to get Splints to do what he wanted. After losing the Shredder armor, Drax became incredibly weak, but was still able to slowly regain his strength over time, being able to save a pair of humans from a Ferris wheel, as well as being able to beat a powered-up sloppy Joseph. Though his inability to defeat Splinter or the Shredder keep him from the top, this warring warrior scientist is still pretty powerful, all things considered. Said to be one of the greatest fighters of all time, it's no surprise to see Splinter this high up. Between his training from his grandfather and his fights in the Battle Nexus as Lujitsu, Splinter probably has the most combat experience in the show. With all of his strength and skill, Splinter was able to fight off opponents that were several times his size, and even those with mystic abilities. And this was all as a human! Splinter is not only a martial arts master, but is able to use an array of weapons, both conventional and certainly unconventional. Like, if you can defeat an enemy using a ladder or a fish, you're probably pretty powerful. His mutation into a rat also granted him a tail that he could use as a whip-like weapon. And we certainly can't forget Splinter's impressive stealth and ninjutsu skills.
Ninja invisibility.
As we said before, if not for Drax threatening to torture his sons, Splinter would have won their fight. Later on in that same episode, Splinter was able to fight off the entire Foot Clan, again, despite a bad back injury. Although his age and lack of mystic weaponry stop him from being ranked higher than the rest of his sons, Splinter certainly lives up to the title of Battle Nexus Champion. Finally reaching another turtle, we have Leonardo. Compared to the rest of his brothers, Leo struggled the most with mastering his mystic weapon. Once he got in some practice though, he was absolutely amazing with it. I mean, have you seen his fight in Many Unhappy Returns? Now that's the power of portals! Later on, when he's given his teleporting katanas, Leo becomes even trickier to hit, getting a huge speed boost, being the only one not to be slowed down by the Shredder's spikes. Occasionally, due to him being a red-eared slider, he can be a bit clumsy, though it's never too much of a hindrance. But perhaps even more impressive than Leo's portals and his swordsmanship are Leo's strategies and ability to see all the angles in a situation. Again, we have to mention his great plans in Many Unhappy Returns. You could also look at episodes like Jupiter Jim Ahoy, Air Turtle, and Layer Games to see examples of Leo being able to use a situation to his advantage, or being able to think several steps ahead. At the time of writing this, the Rise of the TMNT movie has yet to be released, but considering the previously mentioned examples, we feel that he'll have no problems tackling his new role as team leader. Just above him is the youngest turtle, Michelangelo. It's like Raph says, nobody flips like Mikey. Taking a page from his 2012 counterpart, Mikey is incredibly agile and acrobatic, as seen in the fights during Evil League of Mutants and You Got Served. Much like his father, Mikey's also able to use his surroundings and unconventional weapons to his advantage, which is how he was able to defeat Casey in Hot Soup the Game.
How much they want for this?
But of course, what really earns Mikey this spot just outside of the strength podium is his Kusari Fundo. This weapon it's just insane. It's able to create huge fire tornadoes, allows him to lasso and toss around enemies, and it even allows him to be strong enough to throw an entire cargo boat. Just wow. However, because this crazy strength comes from his mystic weapon and not from himself, it sadly wasn't enough to get him into the top 3. For the Bronze Medal of Strength, we had to give it to Big Mama. Big Mama is essentially to this version of the TMNT what Kingpin is to Spider-Man. She has the entirety of the Hidden City in her pocket, having enough wealth and enough people working for her to do pretty much whatever she wants. In her spider form, Big Mama can use her webbing to capture others, allowing her to potentially win fights without needing to throw a single punch. We also can't overlook Big Mama's intelligence and cleverness, as we see throughout the series how she's able to play others in order to get exactly what she wants. Basically, if you try to make a deal with her, chances are it won't end well. However, there are a couple of things that keep her from being in the absolute top. Despite her size and strength in her spider form, Big Mama isn't much of a fighter. There's a reason why she has to hire people to fight for her. It's still possible for her to be both overpowered and outsmarted, and her tendency to be charmed, as seen with people like Bullhop or Don Suave, is also a pretty notable weakness. While her influence, resources, and intelligence still make her a force to be reckoned with, Big Mama still just can't quite compare to the strength of our top 2 characters. Earning our Silver Medal of Strength and the title of Strongest Turtle, we have Raphael. Makes sense, given that he's the one who's always ready for a fight. Being a snapping turtle, Raph is the strongest without a mystic weapon, having both the muscle and the size to fight off multiple opponents with ease. He's even strong enough to throw and carry his brothers without breaking a sweat. Then of course, there are his mystic powers. His aura form that grants him a strength and size boost, and his aura claws that pretty much give him his own mini army. So yeah, Raph's got a lot going for him, though he still isn't quite unbeatable. As said previously, Foot Brute was able to beat him once. Raph's tendency to run into fights without a plan can also sometimes be a detriment. And while he isn't dumb, Raph isn't always the best strategist either. Though his natural strength is just as impressive as his mystic abilities, there is still one character who beats Raph, and the rest of the cast, hands down. Finally, our gold medal of strength goes to none other than the Shredder armor. Yeah, I mean, this really shouldn't be a surprise. Forged by a Krang, the Shredder armor is a powerful piece of dark magic. Though it can warp or destroy the minds of those who wear it, the boost in power that it grants almost makes that a moot point. Although it previously had one small weak point, this weak point was quickly fixed, making the armor pretty much indestructible. It can heal itself, and it can break through anything from Raph's aura form to Donnie's tech to even a giant cargo boat. Things only get worse for its opponents once its mind is restored and is able to fight with actual skill instead of just fighting like a feral animal.
No one betrays Shredder.
Though it can be temporarily stopped or controlled using mystic items, such as Kadai's sword or Big Mama's collar, it ultimately took the combined ninpo strength of the entire Hamato clan for it to be finally defeated. For good. And even then, it was a pretty close call. It's hard to say whether the upcoming movie's antagonist will be stronger, but for right now, we can safely say that the Shredder armor is the most powerful being in Rise of the TMNT. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit the notification bell and binge our Weak to Powerful playlist, where we break down who the most powerful characters are in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies, but most importantly, stay wicked